I know this is going to be controversial, and I want to hear from all of the viewers and listeners. And I'm not sure how to describe all of this. I'm not sure of all the terminology.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter what terms we use, but here's what I'm talking about. There is a different mentality in the way we are educating and preparing the current generation. And I'm not sure where we define the end of one generation and the beginning of another. I know we have millennials, Gen Z, baby boomers, Gen X. I don't really care to even get into all of that. But I know that right now there is a different mindset, certainly at the university level, in terms of how we are preparing young people today, particularly at the university level, in terms of what they are exposed to. And what I'm talking about is everything that's offensive, everything that is contrary to their core value system, they're protected from. A third of current undergraduates think it is acceptable to shout down or exclude speakers that have a different mindset than they have. They don't want them on their campus. We have students that are turning in complaints about professors that present different points of view than the students hold to be their core values. After the presidential election, we had universities all over the country that had comfort suites. They had puppies in suites, on live puppies. I don't know where they got them or what they did with them afterwards, but they had puppies because they knew students were going. Now, in fairness, it's reported that they had the puppies before the election results were in, so I guess it was for either side. But I'm not sure that's entirely true, but that students were going to be upset and needed comforting. What the hell's going on here?
Dr. Phil, it's mind-blowing. And from a therapist who is trauma informed, I really understand that we do want to have safe spaces in our colleges and in life in general, but protecting college kids from what the real world is like, to me, is not the way to go.
Well, you said trauma informed. I totally get that. Let's talk about what constitutes trauma. What's traumatizing kids? Some of this I don't want to get into a lot of detail about because I don't want to bring back up cases that professors have confided in me. But there are situations where professors in law school, because as you know, I've spent most of my professional career in the litigation arena. I was in private practice years ago and then co-founded a company called Courtroom Sciences, and we were in the trial science business, which meant we helped with trial strategy, jury selection, witness preparation, mirror juries at trial, spent a lot of time in trial. And so I've been very active in the legal profession for a long time. So I have a lot of contacts in the law schools and law firms. And I've had people tell me that they have asked students on final, for example, they would have a case that was in the media and they would say, okay, half of the class for your final, I want you to prepare a closing argument for the defense and half of the class for the prosecution. And if it was a politically charged case, the prosecution side, for example, was so upset that wasn't the politically popular side to take, would complain that that was traumatizing to them. It was contrary to their core beliefs, and so being asked to argue the other side was traumatizing to them, and they complained to the dean, and the professor was called on the carpet. That's as specific as I'll get. I don't want to go beyond that because I don't want to open this can of worms back up. But isn't that what advocacy is all about? I mean, when they get into the real world, aren't they supposed to I suppose they can refuse to represent a client, but don't you take them where you find them? If you go to the public defender's office, or you go to the county prosecutor's office, or you open a law office, don't you have to be a bit of a chameleon?
Well, you would know the legal stuff better than me, but I'll tell you that being able to argue both sides of an opinion builds character. My 15-year-old, I picked her up from school the other day and I asked her what her favorite class was, and she goes to a very small progressive high school in Hollywood, and she said, "The opinions class." And I said, "What is that?" And she said, "Well, we have to come up with an opinion about a topic, and then we have to argue both sides of it." She said, "I'm really good at it, Mom." And I was like, "Wow." She said, I'm really like hearing other people's perspectives on things that I wouldn't normally consider right or wrong. And people are making arguments for both sides. And then we can make up our minds. And I think that's what's not happening in colleges right now, where it's, if you're exposed to violence or you have trauma from something that happened to you in childhood, you're not being traumatized if you're not being violated in a classroom. These are just discussions that are being brought up. And I think if something is brought up that triggers something in somebody, then that needs to be dealt with. But I think we're coming from this emotional place where we're allowing this emotional reactivity to happen in schools and not preparing adults to be in the real world.
Well, that's my concern. Listen, I understand safe spaces. If you're someone that has been traumatized, if you're someone that suffers from PTSD, if you're someone that has been the victim of a violent crime, you're a rape victim, or you've been mugged, or you've had a member of your family murdered, and you get into some coarse content that brings all that up, that could be a genuine trigger
Definitely.
for you. I mean, that's legit. Okay, then you shouldn't be in that course. You have a genuine condition or mental illness or circumstance that you should perhaps deal with before you put yourself in that circumstance or environment. But aside from that, to be in a situation that is just contrary to your belief, it seems to me that the real world is not going to make those kind of allowances for you. You're going to get out there where it's kind of like parents that indulge their children. You're going to get out in the world where they don't think you're precious. They don't think you're a prince or princess. They don't think you're God's gift to the world. And they're going to expect you to show up on time. They're going to expect you to carry your own weight. They're going to expect you to do the job. They're going to expect you to perform, make your quotas, do everything you're supposed to do. And if you don't, you're going to wind up at the bottom of the barrel. And it seems to me that we're setting this generation up to turn around and sue their universities for not preparing them to be competitive in the world.
One of the questions that 20-somethings ask me when I'm interviewing them for jobs at my treatment center is, how many vacation days do I get? And when are my breaks? That's it. That's what they're interested in.
Really?
Yeah. It's come up over and over, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is what we're setting them up to ask.
Is that unreasonable or is it us?
Well, I sure didn't grow up that way. I'm not sure how you grew up, but I grew up with a strong work ethic and with parents that were self-made and, um, learning how to deal with adversity and deal with bullying and deal with things that happened at school or in relationships. And I learned by doing, I learned by experiencing. And I think if we take away the experience, how are they going to learn? They're just going to be entitled and thinking that the world owes them something.